Hello students, this is part 3 of our continued breakdown of Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Case for Reparations. So, part 3 begins with the story of Belinda Royall. So why does Coates start his essay, part 3 of his essay, with this story? And he does this for one key reason. So, as you read the beginning of part 3, you will see that Belinda Royall went before her government and argued for and received a pension for her and her family's slavery, essentially. She essentially said that she deserved sort of continued redress for the many damages that her family had suffered from being a part of slavery, the Middle Passage through the time in which she was making the argument. So, by using this historical example, Coates wants to show that even in early American history, the idea that they, African Americans, might be owed something in return was, if not the national consensus, at least not outrageous. So Coates is using this historical example to tell you, the reader, that even if we go back through parts of American history, even early American history, that we will see that the idea of reparations for slavery was something that was considered and discussed. So this is a major example of Coates telling you that the case for reparations did not start with him, did not start with his essay. He is in fact trying to bring to light that these discussions have been going on throughout American history. And we can trace them back hundreds of years and see cases like Belinda Royall, who successfully argued for reparations. So he's showing you that this idea of reparations is something that is not new. And it is something that has been asked throughout American history. So this is not a new concern or a new solution. This is a continued discussion that has been a part of America ever since America had slaves. So, moving on in chapter 3, after presenting to you that example, he goes on to show the history of American slavery and how we can chart the issues that Clyde Ross felt in his family back to slavery. And we can even, I think Coates would argue, see contemporary American issues charted back to slavery and the impact slavery had on African Americans. And one of the ways he suggests this to you is by using a credit card analogy. So first, let's talk about what an analogy is in general. An analogy is a comparison of two things with the goal of explaining a point, an idea, or a concept. You make an analogy by presenting two sorts of things. They can be dissimilar or have a connection in order to help you understand a point. Think of this as you have used analogies throughout your entire life. When you're trying to make someone understand a concept, you might explain it in a set of different terms so that they can see the connections between what you are saying with the idea you're trying to come across. And so Coates uses this idea of a credit card as a way to create an analogy of the issue of slavery in American society. So he goes on and says that although African Americans are living better than the past, Coates argues that the violence and inequalities that we see stemming from the time of slavery are like a run-up credit card bill, where the effects of that balance, the interest accruing daily, are all around us. So what he means by this analogy is that even though after the Civil War, slavery was abolished, right? Many people would argue that as soon as the abolishment of slavery happened, as soon as there were no more slaves, any problem surrounding slavery was over. It's over and done with. We ended slavery. It's done. Coates is saying, and he uses many, many historical examples, such as the example of Clyde Ross, to show that the legacy and impact of slavery did not end with slavery. Instead, it's like a credit card bill, where if you have a credit card bill, you make your one payment, but you don't pay off the entire bill, the interest accrues, and that initial debt that was not repaid builds up the interest and becomes a continual problem to the present day. I'm sure if any of you here have had a credit card that has accrued debt, you know exactly what he means when he talks about that. So what he's saying is that the impact of slavery, the violence, intimidation, and exploitation he tells you about with the people who dealt with the Contract Buyers League, with people like Cloyd Ross, that we see those people's lives, the challenges and exploitation they faced as the accrued debt of never really truly addressing the impact of slavery, of never truly addressing that problem. And even though slavery was abolished, by not truly addressing that part of American history, we have allowed a debt to accrue that makes it hard now to see the initial damages and say that they are finished. Next part on the study guide asks you to address the phrase Coates uses about the high point of lynching has passed. So let's first analyze what an implication is. An implication is an idea you get from something that is only hinted at in writing or speech. So an implication is something that is not stated directly, but from reading the sentence, one can find a separate meaning within it. All right? So Coates says this: the high point of the lynching era has passed, but the memories of those robbed of their lives still live on in the lingering effects. So, note the sentence: the high point of the lynching era has passed. In that sentence, what Coates is applying is that the lynching era itself is not over. It's just the highest point of it has passed. Right? So what he's saying on page 13, what he is implying to you, the reader, in his words, is that lynching and violence towards African Americans in general is still going on. It's just going on at maybe a slightly lesser rate or in a different mode than what it would have been in the high point of lynching in the era of Jim Crow. So what Coates wants to say is that people tend to look at the abolishment of Jim Crow laws. They tend to look at the civil rights movement and say, that happened, therefore all of the problems with racism in the United States are over. Coates is saying here that no, these problems are still going on. That is what he is implying when he says the high point of the lynching era has passed, but does not say that the lynching era itself is over. He never makes that claim. Finally, let's talk about the subtitle of this section. Coates subtitled this section, "We Inherit Our Patrimony." So what does this mean? You find out the information at the end of the section when Coates quotes the former president of Yale, Timothy Dwight, his comments made in 1810. Again, note, these comments that of Dwight that Coates is using are deep, deep historical comments, showing to you that the discussion of reparations and the discussion that simply abolishing slavery was not enough to repair the damage done by slavery have deep historical roots in the country. So he quotes this former Yale president's words. First, patrimony is the inheritance of property, especially along the male side of the family, the inheritance of fathers to sons. Think of it like medieval law. You know, the king would pass on his kingship to the son. That would be a patrimonial inheritance. So if you read Dwight's comments on 13, Coates draws your attention to the fact that this president in 1810, right, said that Americans inherit all the benefits of past America, the benefits of the Revolutionary War, the benefits of independence, the benefits of the creation of the Constitution, the benefits of the creation of a Bill of Rights. All of our freedoms that were created by past Americans, we inherit. And Dwight says, then, if we inherit the good, we must be ready to inherit the debts, the ills, the bad parts that our past Americans created, such as slavery. Dwight basically is telling the people who read his comments in 1810 that you can't have it both ways. You can't simply accept the process of American freedom and the process of the Constitution without, in your heart, trying to reckon with the fact of the debt, like slavery, that was also created. You can't have it one way or the other. You can't have all of the benefits of past Americans without any reconciling of the issues and damages those past Americans may have done to other people on the continent. We can't have a wholly beneficial moment of American history without recognizing the realities and harsh truths, the depths of this American history. We can't ignore the credit card bill of debts that Coates is drawing our attention to. We will continue this discussion in part 4 of our breakdown of Coates's essay.